Government's fight against crime is facing another challenge. A high number of special task force officers are leaving the service en masse. To discuss some of the reasons behind this, we are now joined by Simon Howell, who is a senior research associate at the UCT, University of Cape Town. We're also joined by Lesiba, Thobakgale, spokesperson for the South African Police Union. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. And if you look at the numbers, at least in 2022, Lesiba, we had, 500 or so thousand private security personnel in active duty, while you have 140,000 South African police officers. Those numbers already tell you that you have 4 times the amount of security guards that are out there versus police. I mean, is this an inevitable thing, or is the South African police service being sabotaged by the security sector?
Thank you, Butabo, for having us. There is no sabotage of some sort that is existing when we see highly specialized, trained members of the South African police services, like your special task force being the NIU, and even others from other members from specialized units, including of our detectives who leave the South African police services for greener pastures. So we do not see it as a sabotage, but it is something that has been coming for some time, because issues that relates to mobility, I mean upward mobility of our members, those were the issues indeed, which some of the members, when they see that they are stuck in one rank, they cannot go high in terms of upward mobility, then they decide to go for greener pastures. And as well, where you find that a warrant officer will sit, will have a child who will start school and even go to university, that warrant officer being on the very same rank as a warrant officer, there is not even a promotion for that member. So those are some of the factors which indeed are impacting on the high number of members that we see them leaving the South African police services. Police killings, it also contribute as well. Some, they say, instead of me being killed, let me just leave and look for something else. We have seen with the high numbers that we are seeing within the South African police services. And further to that, we also have some who get to be targeted through Regulation 9, which we call the expeditious process, where they get targeted and they get disciplined. Some, you find that indeed there is no case against that member, but they will be targeted, and for them to be punished for whatsoever reason that is existing. SAPs need to address these types of issues in order to retain members. But when you lose detectives whom, when they look at that, they do not have resources to do their work, and at the end of the day, somebody saying to them, no, come to my private security, I will give you resources, you will have everything that you need and even more money. Then they tend to leave all the skills and the experience that is there, and even the necessary manpower that South African police services need. It happened to go, and there is nothing that is being done by the SAPs to retain members. It remains to be a worrying factor.
Yeah. Simon, is the provincial police commissioner flogging a dead horse here? He seems to believe people can't just leave their job at the South African police service to just go and be a security guard for some high-profile individual who's wealthy and has got a whole lot of, property to want to protect. He says, surely there's something else that is going on. How do you just cripple a whole South African government protection security services just to go and protect one individual?
Well, I think the police commissioner should look inwardly and ask why people are leaving the force. I mean, as mentioned, one of the key issues is managerial, and the fact that people find themselves in positions and they cannot advance. They also face, considerable danger on the job and considerable stress on the job. And frankly, private security is often seen as a far nicer place to work, and one that allows them to have upward mobility and allows them to engage in a way that is well-resourced. So, I think SAPS needs to look inwardly here and question why people are leaving rather than trying to blame people for leaving in the first place. There is some significant issues here, and primarily around management itself. So unless they begin to deal with those, people continue to leave. And this is nothing new. People have been leaving for a very long time. And, a lot of skill has been lost in SAPS as a result of a continued mismanagement of people and mismanagement of resources and equipment.
And you don't think that this could be, underhand forces, wealthy people who are trying to put together for themselves a rather formidable police force outside of the one that is within the state, and that could possibly later challenge even the authority of the state.
Well, I don't think it's something that's being done consciously. I think that, if we look at the size of the private security sector, it's far larger than SAPS. And a lot of people will go to private security before they go to the police as a result of a lack of trust and confidence in the police. So, the private security sector has emerged in response to the inabilities or the lack of management in SAPS. This is a natural function of SAPS simply not being competitive within the security sector, despite they should be the ones that rule the communities, the policing sector, and yet they find themselves on the back foot here because they're simply just not good enough to be, they're not managed well enough to be competitive.
Lesiba, is it safe to assume that the South African Police Service is being hollowed out in terms of specially trained members? The state invests a lot of money, I suppose, in training these members. However, they become underutilized, they're not appreciated, they're not paid well enough, and they leave. Who's left behind? Are we to assume that the state is now left without these critical skills that it needs?
Unfortunately, Butabo, if the South African Police Services or the state, as you are mentioning, they really do not have a plan to take care of their own members, to make sure that they better the conditions of service of our members, to make sure that the upward mobility is something that is being looked into, and we can conclude an agreement that speaks to the promotion policy. It's been years we have since tabled a promotion policy which propose around 2 years if a member has at least qualifications, and if one has a number of service in terms of experience, at least 4 years for them to move to the next rank. And we move away from the 11 to 12 years for them to go up to the next rank, then we would be able to retain our members within the South African Police Services. And for the state or for management to come and try that maybe it is sabotage or maybe it is something that they did not see it coming, we are saying that that is something that they are responsible for. They just do not have a will to resolve all of these issues, to make sure that the conditions of service and that the members are being kept happy. Because for you to have happy employees, you need to make sure that you ensure that you keep them happy. You need to make sure that their conditions of service and even their benefits are on a level that the members themselves, they do not even see a need to go somewhere else. Because remember, policing, it is a calling. But as far as it is a calling, conditions of service and upward mobility growth, it is something that is important. And even the issue of salary, they need to be sorted out so that members can be retained within the South African Police Services.
Simon, somebody would say, yeah, well, it's another instance of privatization, and this time around we'll be talking about privatization of policing in the country, where more and more we'll see private security companies delving into areas of policing that otherwise should be done by the state. And so someone will cry, privatize electricity, privatize even policing in this country, even healthcare. Privatized and so on and so forth. Is this an instance where we're going to have to see the South African police relying more and more on private security to carry out certain fundamental policing functions?
Well, unfortunately, I think, I don't think it's privatization by force, but it's privatization by need. And the fact of the matter is that SAPS has been, for various reasons, battling to secure the country and to secure communities and make them feel safe. And people are now looking elsewhere to feel safe. And if the private security sector is filling in that gap, then that's simply a function of the results of competition, So, there is a need for SAPS to do better, at least on a managerial level, and a need to further capacitate and further resource the police. But, there's also a need to acknowledge the fact that in many instances, private security has now cornered the market, and the best thing to do, frankly, is to work with them rather than against them. Of course, with privatization comes many problems, but until such time as the state manages to harness and marshal the resources it needs to begin creating an effective police force, and that means not only quantitatively in terms of numeracy and the number of police, but actually in the quality of the police and the quality of the training and the quality of the operations that they conduct. Private security is simply filling in the gap there, and it's unfortunate, but ultimately, no one is to blame here but SAPS management itself.
Senior Research Associate at the Centre of Criminology at UCT. Simon Howell, appreciate your time, as well as Lesiba Thobakgale speaking for the South African Policing Union.